Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you very well. Before we get started, we just wish to offer condolences to Yehudis Hutner. Her father passed away, Avraham Mordechai ben Shevach. We offer our condolences. I will send out an email with any kind of a phone number because she's accepting phone calls for Shiva, and I think she'd probably appreciate it. I'll send an email out after the call.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the name.
It was Avraham Mordechai ben Shevach.
Okay.
And that's the father of Yehudis Hutner.
Okay, before we begin today's shir, there's a request. Tomorrow morning, when davening, have in mind an aliyah neshama for Shmuel Lazer ben Michael. Shmuel Lazer ben Michael, it's his yahrzeit tomorrow. Shmuel Lazar ben Michael. And tomorrow's shir will also be dedicated to his Ilu Neshama. So that's Shmuel Lazar ben Michael. We're in MIddos, Perek Aleph, and we were learning Mishnah Gimel about the 5 gates into the base into the Harabayas. We go back again to diagram 2. Diagram 2, and your perspective is east to west. You're on Har Hazesim, and you're looking from east towards west. So you would walk down the mountain, come to the eastern gate of the Har Habayis. You would then walk into the eastern gate of the Ezras Noshim. You would then continue walking, and you would come to 15 steps, and that would lead you to Shar Nicanor. Okay. I'm going to see if we can get this now on the bigger picture. We'll see if the zoom goes in there. But the 5 gates, the eastern gate is Shushan Habira. The southern gate, you have it in the footnotes, the 2 southern gates are Share Hulda. The western gate is Shar Kiponos. And the northern gate is Shar Teddy. Those are the 5 gates to get to the Har Habayis. I don't know if we'll be able to get this picture in or not. See if we can get this picture in.
If everybody clicks on speaker view, you can see and actually go to like full screen, you'll be able to see it better. So make sure you click on speaker view on the top so you can see the rough screen big, and then go to full screen and you'll see everything clearly, including the, I can even see the lettering.
So this is, you have to imagine that there's the Har Habayis around here. This is just the Beis HaMikdash, the second Beis HaMikdash. As we learned yesterday, it does not take
lost where he was big.
The Har Habayis is 500 amos by 500 amos. And on the Har Habayis, the Beis HaMikdash was built. Footnotes, let's make believe that it's Har Habayis. And at the top there's Har Habayis. And in the west there's Har Habayis. And in the south, you came down from Har Hazesim here. You walked through. In order to get through to the Har Habayis, you had to go through Shushan Habira if you took the eastern gate. So you walked into the eastern gate. You are on Har Habayis, and now you're going to walk through the eastern gate of the Ezras Noshim, right here. If you continue walking, you're going to get to 15 steps, and those 15 steps are the steps where the Levium stood when they sang Shir Hamalos at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. There are 15 Shir Hamalos, there are 15 steps. You walk up these 15 steps, and here's something called Shar Nicanor. Very important gate. which we'll learn about today or tomorrow. You continue walking eastward, actually westward, and now you have the Ezras Yisrael. It's not a large area. It's a small area. It's 11 amos, 22, 23, 24 feet wide, but it's very long. And this is where Yisrael was allowed to go. You couldn't go any further than that. Beyond that, you have the Ezras Kohanim. Then you have the Mizbeach. And then you have 12 steps to go into the rectangular building called Ulam. Then you have another entranceway to go into the Heichal. The Heichal has in it the menorah on the south side. It has the Shulchan for the Lechem Aponim on the north side, and the Mizbeach HaKtoreh sort of in the center towards the entrance. There is a partition towards the back of the Heichal, and in there is the Kodesh Kadoshim. What you have to notice here is that we're talking about three separate places. There's Har HaBayis, there's Beis HaMikdash, and then there's the Azorah. So while this is the Beis HaMikdash, and we call it the Azorah, there is this structure. This is a whole separate structure inside the Beis HaMikdash. There is the outer Mizbeach upon which they sacrificed animals. And that's in, so to speak, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, if we're going to use the word courtyard. This structure is inside the walls of the Azorah. Look how many walls we're talking about now. We're going to make believe this is a wall. This is the wall of the Har HaBayis. The second wall is the wall for the Azorah to get into the Beis HaMikdash itself. And then there's a third wall for this structure, which is the Heichal and the Kodesh Kadoshim. So again, you would come down from Har HaZeisim, go through the eastern gate of the Har HaBayis, which is Shushan Habira, continue east, through west, through the Shar Ezras Noshim, walk up 15 steps, get to the Shar Nikanor Ezras Yisrael, and then that's basically where a Yisrael would end. Kohanim could continue, and eventually you come to the Kodesh Kadoshim, if you're permitted to go there. So that's the perspective that we have of Har HaBayis wall, Beis HaMikdash wall, and we'll call it Azorah wall. You have to go through the Har HaBayis to be able to get into the Beis HaMikdash. The only way to do it. Okay, now we can go back to our Mishnah with that perspective. And we are on page 15. Looks like I'm too high. On. Okay. So in Perek Aleph, Mishnah Gimel, Chamisha Shorim Hoyu LaHar HaBayis. There were 5 gates to enter Har HaBayis. Continue on page 15. Shnei Sharei Chuldim and Adoram, 2 gates that we call the Chulda gates on the south. You can see that at the bottom of page 15. There's a picture. Mishamshim Knesset Yitzir, you were able to use the Sharei Chulda to enter and leave the Har HaBayis. And as we mentioned yesterday, you can see on the southern side, there were people that lived there outside the Har HaBayis. Kiponos Min HaMayrev, the Kiponos gate is to the west. Mishamish Knesset Yitzir, you were able to go in and out of the Har HaBayis. Tadi Min HaTzafon, the Tadi gate is to the north. Mishamish Klum, it didn't really serve any purpose, which is a strange way to say it, a bit. But we learned yesterday that what the Mishnah means is it wasn't a regular exit and entry point. It was used for Kohanim who became Tamei inside the Beis HaMikdash, and they had to go through a certain process, and then they would leave the Beis HaMikdash. So they had a tedi, which means tzenius. They had a private place where they can leave the Beis HaMikdash. Sha'ar HaMizrachi, the eastern gate, Olav Shushan Habira Tzura. There's a picture of the Shushan Habira, of the capital of the Persian Empire, which we spoke about yesterday. Two reasons the Gemara says this was necessary. Either the Jews did it on their own to show gratitude to the Persian kingdom who allowed them to finish the second Beis HaMikdash, or the kingdom, the Persian kingdom, ordered the Jews to do that so that the Jews would understand that the Beis HaMikdash stands based upon the permission and the authority of the Persian government. Shabo Kohen Gadol Hasorif Es Hapara V'chol Misaadeh Yotzim Lahar HaMishra. So here you have to take a look at page 19, page Yutes. This is where we were up to yesterday. They built a bridge that went from Har HaZeisim, or as the Mishnah calls it, Har HaMishcha. They built a bridge that went from Har HaMishcha to Har HaBayis. The Har HaBayis Eastern Gate. Har HaBayis Eastern Gate is Shushan Habiva. So there was a bridge. What was the purpose of this bridge? Well, they had to take a Parah Aduma from the Beis HaMikdash along with the Kohanim and burn the Parah Aduma, which had to be burned on Har HaZeisim. That is the bridge they used to get there. Besides being used for burning the Parah Aduma, they also used it, according to many Mefarshim, as an entry-exit way for anybody who wanted to enter the Har HaBayis. But they're making a point in this Mishnah that this gate is very different. It is built with a bridge in order to deal with the Parah Aduma. What was the Parah Aduma doing on the Har HaBayis? Why didn't they just take it out to the Har HaMishcha? And the answer is because they first had to take the Parah Aduma into the Sanhedrin, who were located in the Lishkas Hagozis, which was located on the Har HaBayis, was located. We'll learn about exactly where the Lishkas Hagozis was. The Lishkas Hagozis was the room where the Sanhedrin of 71 met, and they would have to bring the Parah Aduma in to be checked. You have to make sure that it doesn't have a wound. You have to make sure that it's perfectly red. All the halachas of Parah Aduma, it had to be inspected there. And then when it was inspected and it was found to be kosher, they took the Parah Aduma with the Kohen Gadol, at least according to this Mishnah, with the Kohen Gadol and Kohanim who were going to help him. They took it across the bridge to Har HaMishcha. They burnt the Parah Aduma there, and they created the Parah Aduma ash. Parah Aduma ash, as we know, is used to purify a person from tumas meis. God forbid a person comes in contact with a dead body. In the ways that the Torah says that's considered contact, you go into the house where there's a dead body, you touch the dead body. All the laws of the Torah describes about contact with a dead body. Person can't just go to the mikveh. He needs hazahas Parah Aduma on the third day and the seventh day. Okay? That's Parashas Chukas with all its halachas. You begin your process of tahara on third day. On the seventh day, you have Parah Aduma ash sprinkled on the person who is tummy. Parah Aduma was critical in the Beis HaMikdash. And that's because you couldn't enter the Beis HaMikdash if you were Tamei. And certainly you couldn't enter the Beis HaMikdash if you were Tamei Meis. We're not talking about the Har HaBayis. If a person was Tamei Meis, he was allowed to enter the Har HaBayis. We'll learn about that another time. But you couldn't enter the Beis HaMikdash if a person was Tamei. He certainly couldn't enter the Beis HaMikdash if he was Tamei Meis, which is a very severe kind of tumah. The only way to remedy that is through the Eish of the Parah Aduma. If the Eish of the Parah Aduma wasn't performed properly, or the Kohanim became Tamei when they were making Parah Aduma ash, if that happened, then you have a problem with the whole Parah Aduma ash. And if you have a problem with the Parah Aduma ash, all the people who have become Tamei and need the Parah Aduma ash to purify themselves to go into the Beis HaMikdash, or the Kohanim who came into contact with a dead body, who need the Parah Adumah ash to be able to do their work in the Beis HaMikdash. If there was a problem with the way the Parah Adumah was done, then everyone's got a problem. Then the avoda is problematic. Everything's problematic inside the Beis HaMikdash. So there were a lot of chumras that were employed to deal with making sure the Parah Adumah was done in the most ritually pure way. Some of it we're going to learn about today in the Mishnah, and that's the picture on page, your test, page 19. We'll see maybe tomorrow, the day after, we'll go into a little more about the Parah Adumah, because it's amazing the kinds of things they did to make sure the Parah Adumah was done properly. They built this bridge. If you take a look at page 19, it's a double-decker bridge. The first layer of the bridge are arches, an arch with legs. Arch, two legs, arch, two legs. And then they built a second floor, and they did the same thing. An arch and two legs, and an arch and two legs. But be very careful the way you look at that picture, because the second level, the legs are in the middle of the arches below. It's not legs on top of legs and arch on top of arch. The lower level arch, in the middle of the lower level arch, above it, there's a leg of the pointed out to you. You have a leg. If you go straight up, the leg is in the middle of the arch above it. They didn't do arch above arch and leg above leg. Each leg, if you continue moving up, the arch, the leg is in the middle of the arch above it. Why did they do that way? So we have to introduce a concept called kever tahom. Kever tahom means there are places where we don't know if someone was buried. We don't know. For whatever reason, a suffix, there's question about whether a person's buried there. And that's called kever tahom. We're not dealing now with how they built the Beis HaMikdash. We will get to that. But when they built this bridge, they wanted to make sure there was no problem with kever tahom. So now this is my drawing. I don't draw that well, but this is my drawing. This is the ground. This is the surface. Body 1, body 2, body 3. This is a picture not like the one on page 19. This is a picture showing leg on top of leg and arch on top of arch. Now what happens here? If you build the bridge this way, there's a rule about a kever. Between the body and the top of the kever, we need a tefach. Let's make believe right now a tefach is 4 inches. Between the top of the body and the ground, we need a tefach, 4 inches. If there's no 4-inch space between the top of the body and the ground level, that's called a tumah ritzutza. It's a compressed tumah. And compressed tumah meaning there's no space for the tumah to go anywhere. The tumah is right at ground level. So what's the halacha of tumah ritzutza? Tumah ritzutza bokas va'ola ad l'shamayim. Tumah ritzutza goes all the way up to heaven. So if somebody walks over a kever and the person that's buried underneath there, there's not 4 inches or a tefach between the body and ground level, and you walk over that kever, the person is tamei mace for our purposes today. Because the tumah of that mace goes out of the kever and goes all the way up to heaven. All the way up to heaven. It doesn't make a difference how high you are above the kever. The tumah is compressed in the kever, and things that are compressed need to get out. They need to expand. They need a place to go to, and the tumor goes all the way up. So if you look at the picture, body number 2, you built an arch. Body number 2 is right at ground level, and no one knows about it. So they built this arch, but it's no longer tumor ritzutza, because when the tumor rises up from the ground, it now has an open space under the arch. We gave it 4 tfachim. And once it has 4 tfachim, it doesn't rise up to heaven. So this open space is now a place where the tumor can go, and we avoid the tumor going up all the way. If we built the arches on the bridge to Har HaZeisim this way, arch on arch, and leg on leg, we have another problem. We solved the problem of a body that's buried under the arch. What happens if there's body number 2, body number 1, and body number 3, 1 and 3? They're buried under the leg. Body number 2 is buried under an open space. By being buried under an open space, it catches the tumor because there's space, and it stops it from going any further. There's a body buried under the leg. There's no space. It's still a tumor ritzutza. And this tumor would go all the way up to heaven. And if you had a leg on top of the leg, it's still a tumor ritzutza. And it will go all the way up to heaven. So if they built the bridge this way, and on top of this, these 2 arches, they put a bridge, if there was a dead body under, if there was body 1 or body 3, that tumor would go all the way up, and anyone walking across that bridge, including the Kohanim, they would become ritually impure as tumas meis, and then they would go off to the Har HaZeisim as ritually impure and do the work of the Parah Aduma, and the Parah Aduma wouldn't be kosher. So in order to avoid what we call tumas hatahom, they built it this way, as you can see it on page 19. There's no problem anymore with anyone buried anywhere. If a person is buried at ground level under an arch, the tumor goes up the arch and stops there because now it has free space. If the person is buried under the leg, the tumor will go up, but there's an arch on the second level, and the tumor will end there. So people who are walking on the bridge above the second level will not become tamei. So everything's taken care of now. For the body that's buried at the ground floor, under the arch, the tumor goes into the arch and ends there and can't go to the top of the bridge. For the body that's buried under a leg, the tumor will go up, but on top of the leg on the second level, there's an arch, and the tumor will go into that arch and stop there. Either case, a body under the arch or a body under the leg at ground level, the tumor will end, and the people walking across the bridge do not have to worry about tumor ritzutza. And that's basically what's explained in footnote 63, footnote Samach Gimel, at the bottom of page 19 in the Chemdas Yisrael. So that's why they built the bridge. Arch, 2 legs, above that arch, 2 legs, but the legs now were in the middle of the arch below. If you take a look at picture 19, you can now understand how all kinds of tumors have been taken care of, and people can walk across the bridge without fearing that they will become tamei. Okay.
If I may, just for a modern day practical application, in the Merkaz, they have these tubes that come up as you cross the street. I'd heard it was for purposes of eliminating tumors. Is there anything about that? Is that this?
It's for purposes of Kohanim. It's to create an open space where the tumor, if there's a tumor ritzutza there, in other words, we don't want to start undigging everything to find bodies because we don't like to do that. We don't want to disturb the bodies. But to the extent that there's people have information that a certain area was used as a cemetery, and now they want to build a highway or a road or whatever. So we know the protests that go on here in Eretz Yisrael, and it's a very, very significant issue because this place has been inhabited for a very long time, and there are cemeteries that we don't know about all over the place. And the Gedolim pass in different ways in different places. So if there's information that at some point in time there was a cemetery in a place, we don't know we don't want to dig down and find the bodies. And there are other problems that deal with the tumah. So we create this opening where the tumah is able, quote unquote, to escape and doesn't come up and create problems for Kohanim. Yes, that's the idea. Okay, let's go now, before we go to the next Mishnah. Let's now go to the Rambam. We said we'd learn the Rambam. I believe Shmuel sent it out. And it's the Rambam, Hilchas Beis Habchira, Perek Ches. You should have received 3 pages of Rambam. Rambam page 1, Rambam page 2, Rambam page 3. And the Rambam is now going to teach us the halachas of Shmiras HaMikdash, which we've learned about. There was a mitzvah to guard the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohanim guarded in 3 places: southern wall, Beis Avtinas, where they made the Ketores; northern wall, Shar Hanitzutz, northwest, where they had fire in case they needed more fire for the Mizbeach; and the Beis HaMoked also on the northern wall of the Beis HaMikdash, where there was a room there with a fire. There were several rooms there. There was a fire there where Kohanim can go in and warm themselves up. It was a cold marble floor, and they had to walk barefoot. Those are Kohen guard places. The first 2, Beis Avtinas and Beis Hanitzutz, are 2 floors, and the Kohen stood on the top floor and guarded, and there was a Levi at the bottom floor. The Levi at the bottom floor was there not because it was his guard post. He was there because of the mitzvah of Yilavu Alecha V'Yishasucha. Levim are supposed to assist Kohanim in their work. So since they're Kohanim guarding, a Levi needs to be there to assist the Kohen. So in the first 2 of the 3 places where the Kohanim guarded, Beis Avtinas and Beis Hanitzutz, there were 2 floors. Kohen was on the top floor, the Levi was on the bottom floor. The Beis HaMoked was only 1 floor, it was a room. The Kohen was inside, the Levi was outside. Those are the 3 Kohanim places. Then there are 21 places where the Levium guarded. The 21 places where the Levium guarded are 4, 5, 4, 5 plus 3. The 4 corners of the Har Habayis and the 5 entryways into the Har Habayis. The 4 corners of the Beis HaMikdash and the 5 entryways into the Beis HaMikdash. 4, 5, 4, 5. And then the Levium had 3 additional places that the Mishnah describes for a total of 21. Please remember the distinction about where the Levium stood in terms of guarding the Har Habayis versus guarding the Beis HaMikdash. When they were guarding the Har Habayis, the 4 corners of the Har Habayis, they stood inside the wall of the Har Habayis. Each corner had a Levi or 10 Levium there because they were allowed to sit. They needed to watch and guard the Beis HaMikdash the whole night. And in order for them to do that, they needed to sit. To sit, you were allowed to sit on the Har Habayis. So therefore, when they guarded the Har Habayis, they were allowed to be in the 4 corners of the Har Habayis on the inside of the wall. And when they were guarding the 5 gates into the Har Habayis, they were allowed to be inside the gates. When you're dealing with what we call the Beis HaMikdash, and you're guarding the 4 corners of the Beis HaMikdash, you can't be inside the Beis HaMikdash guarding the corners because you're not allowed to sit there. So they had to stand or sit outside the 4 corners of the Beis HaMikdash. And when they guarded the 5 gates into the Beis HaMikdash, they had to guard them from the outside of the gate so that they would be able to sit. The only people that can sit in quote unquote the Azara, I use those words interchangeably. We're going to get more and more into Azara and Beis HaMikdash as we go into the Masechta. No one was allowed to sit in the Azara except for a Sion, from the house of David. Otherwise, you couldn't sit there. Therefore, the Leviim guarded the Har HaBayis from inside the walls and inside the gates, and they guarded the Beis HaMikdash from outside the walls and outside the gates. So the Kohanim are three places with Leviim assisting, and the Leviim are in 21 places, 4-5 Har HaBayis, 4-5 Beis HaMikdash, and 3 additional places. That's what we learned. Let's take a look at what the Rambam says. The Rambam in Hilchos Beis HaBchira, Perek Zayin says, Perek Ches says as follows: Shmiras HaMikdash mitzvahs aseh. Guarding the Beis HaMikdash is a mitzvah aseh. It's a positive commandment. It's one of the 248 mitzvahs. Eating matzah, shaking a lulav, putting up a mezuzah. One of the 248 mitzvahs is to guard the Beis HaMikdash. And if you recall, when we were originally learning the Mishnah, there was a Mishkanos Avri Yaakov of Gelbstein, who in the 1840s wanted to reinstitute guarding the Har HaBayis because he believed that the mitzvah has nothing to do with whether the Beis HaMikdash is there or not, and therefore he wanted to start the rotation of guarding the Har HaBayis. Most poskim of his generation didn't agree with him, and therefore we do not unfortunately have a shmira of the Har HaBayis. But it's one of those mitzvahs assays, and there are a lot of mitzvahs that unfortunately we can't do. And when Mashiach comes, we'll get all these mitzvahs back. Even though we don't have to be scared of enemies or robbers coming into the Beis HaMikdash, that's not what the guards are there for. The only purpose of guarding the Beis HaMikdash is for its dignity. It's a palace of the sovereign king of the whole universe, and a palace gets guards. It's for its covet. Eino Domer. And here there are different comments I've received about how to pronounce the next word. Platrin, Platerin. Platerin is a palace, or Platrin, whatever you're comfortable with. Sheyesh alav shomrim, the Platrin she'ein alav shomrim. You can't compare a palace that has guards to a palace that doesn't have guards. And that's why there was guards at the Beis HaMikdash. It's one of the 248 mitzvahs. Rambam, halacha beis. Guarding the Beis HaMikdash is a mitzvah the whole night. So we gather from the Rambam that the guards didn't have to be at their post during the day, although we saw, for example, a Minchas Chinuch that questioned this, but the Rov Mefarshim say that the guards were there only at night. V'hashomrim heim hakohanim halaviyim. The shomrim were kohanim and leviyim. Shenem v'ato v'necha itach lefnei ol ha'edus. Klomer atem tiyu shomrim lo. V'reinema v'shomru es mishmeres oil moed. V'nema v'achonim keid lefnei oil moed mizracha Moshe Aaron uvano shomrim mishmeres hakodesh. The Rambam quotes the pasuk in the Torah from which we learn out the mitzvah of guarding the Beis HaMikdash. Halacha Gimel. V'im batvu shmira, and if they decided that they're not going to guard the Beis HaMikdash, avru below saseh, they violate. Who's the they? Okay, that's the famous question. This looks like a mitzvah hatzibur. It's a mitzvah on the tzibur. So who actually violates it? Separate discussion. But if they do not guard the Beis HaMikdash, they are over mitzvah lo saseh. Like you can't eat chazer, a negative commandment. If you fail to guard the Beis HaMikdash, you violate a negative commandment. Therefore, guarding the Beis HaMikdash is one of the 248 mitzvahs aseh. Failing to guard it is one of the 365 negative mitzvahs. Shenema, the Rambam quotes the pasuk, "V'shamu es mishmeres hakodesh, v'loshen shmira azhorehui, halamata sheshmirasei mitzvahs aseh." Watching the Beis HaMikdash is a mitzvah aseh, ubitul shmirasei mitzvahs lo aseh. And not doing it is a mitzvah, nullifying the mitzvah. Not doing it is a lo aseh. Halacha daled. Mitzvah shmiraso shiakonim shon mi befnim v'alaviyah mi bachutz. The mitzvah of shmira means that the kohanim guard the Beis HaMikdash from the inside, and the Leviyim guard it from the outside. Right? The kohanim are guarding inside the walls. They're guarding places that are already quote unquote Beis HaMikdash type areas, and the Leviyim are guarding the Har HaBayis and the area outside the Beis HaMikdash. All together, 24 groups guard the Beis Hamikdash in 24 places. And that's the interesting word here. The Rambam uses the word groups, which means we had this discussion about whether Shmira means one Kohen, one Levi, or whether it was 10 Kohanim and 10 Leviim in each place. The Rambam uses the word, there were 24 Ada. An Ada usually means 10 people, and therefore some conclude that the Rambam holds that in each place there were 10 Kohanim and 10 Leviim. In the 21 places, there were 10 Leviim. HaKohanim begimel makomos, the Rambam says, the Kohanim guarded in 3 places, turning the page, next Rambam 2, V'aleviim b'chaf aleph mokum. And Leviim guarded in 21 places. V'heichan hayu shomim halacha hey, where did they guard? Kohanim hayu shomim b'beis haftinas, u'beis hanitzut, u'beis hamokim. That's what we learned. The 3 places that the Kohanim guarded were beis haftinas, where they learned how to make ketores, southern wall. Beis hanitzut, where they got the fire if the Mizbeach got extinguished, chas v'sholom, on the northwestern wall. U'beis hamokim, and the beis hamokim. Beis Avtinas u Beis Hanitzos hoyu aliyas benuyas b'tzad shari ha'azora v'harovim hoyu shom. Excuse me. As we mentioned, the Beis Avtinas and the Beis Hanitzos were 2 floors. And therefore, the Kohanim were on the 2nd floor, the Leviim were on the 1st floor. But the Beis Hamokeh, the Rambam says, Beis Hamokeh kipa uvayis gadol hoya mukaf rovdim shel ever v'ziknei Beis Av shel osayom hoya shein shom afteichas biyadu. This we'll see later. The Beis Hamokeh was not 2 floors, it was just a large room, and therefore the Kohen was inside, the Levi was outside. Okay, I'm now skipping to Halacha Ches, which is on page 3 of the Rambam. V'heichen hoyu haleviim shomim, where did the Leviim guard? The Rambam just told us the 3 places where the Kohanim guarded. Where did the Leviim guard? So we know what the rule is for Leviim. 4, 5, 4, 5 plus 3. So the Rambam says, Al Chamisha Shari Harabayas, the 5 gates to the Harabayas. Rabbi say 5 gates to the Harabayas. Now we need to know this Baal Peh. 5 gates to the Harabayas. 2 Shari Hulda on the south. 1 to the west, Kiponos. 1 to the north, Tedi. And 1 to the east, Shushan Habira. Those are the 5 gates into the Beis HaMikdash, and the Leviim guarded there. Val Abba Pinosa Mitochen, they guarded the Harabayas at the 4 corners of the Harabayas inside, because they were allowed to sit on the Harabayas. Val Abba Pinos Hazomi Bachutz, and the 4 corners of the Azorah, meaning for us, Beis HaMikdash, that structure, the 4 corners, but outside. She'osaleshe Ba'Azorah, you're not allowed to sit in the Azorah, unless you're a sign of Malchus Beis David. Obviously, a Kohen and a Levi can't be a sign of Malchus Beis David, because Kohanim and Leviim come from Shevet Levi, and David comes from Yehuda. Bal Chamish Shari Azorah, Chutz Azorah, and the 5 gates of the Azorah, which we'll learn about tomorrow, B'li Neder, but they had to stand outside the gate of the Azorah because you couldn't sit in the Azorah. Shari Kohanim Shomrim Al Shar HaMogid Al Shar HaNitzutz Harei Shmona Osam Mokom. So we have 18 places for the Leviim. 4, 5, 4, 5, 9, 9, 18. Where's the next 3? Tests. Those were the additional 3 places where the Leviim stood guard. We learned about this in the Mishka, the room where they checked karbonos to make sure that there was no mum, and the Lishka, the room where they sewed the paroches, and there was a room that was behind the wall of the Kodesh Kadoshim, according to some of Farshim. Halacha Yud. Uma'amidim mamuna echot al kol mishmoras hashomrim. And they appointed 1 person to be in charge of all the guards. Rabbi Isai, who's in charge of the guards? This is pretty easy. Ben Bibi. Ben Bibi is the one in charge of all the guards. There are 15 appointees in the Beis HaMikdash, delineated in Masechta Shkolim, and one of these was the person in charge of the guards. And he's named Ben Bibi. Even if his name was Shmelka, if you became the head of the guards, your name became Ben Bibi. Okay, so they appointed someone to be the supervisor or the boss of all the guards. Ish Harabayas Hayanikra, they called him Ish Harabayas, the man in charge of the Harabayas. And he would go around every night and check to see if the guards are awake or they're sleeping. And there were people walking ahead of him with torches so he can see what's going on. And if he approached, when Bibi approached the guard, and the guard didn't stand up and say, "Oh, Shalom Aleichem Ish Harabayis," that meant that he basically fell asleep at his guard post. And then he gave him a little whip with his whip to wake him up, which is also a punishment, so to speak, for falling asleep in God's palace when you're supposed to be guarding it. Reshus hoyelo lisrof es ksuso ad she'omen b'Yerushalayim makol ba'azora kol ben Levi loke u'b'godav nesrofim sheyoshen al mishmarta. And the Ben Bibi, the Ish Harabayis, had permission for a person who repeatedly fell asleep at his guard post. He was allowed to take away his clothing and burn his clothing as a knas. And the ruckus that it caused in the Beis Hamikdash, when this occurred, people outside the Beis Hamikdash who lived outside the wall of the Harabayis, we saw the picture, they were able to hear the ruckus and they would say to each other, "What's going on in the Azora? What's going on in the Beis Hamikdash?" And they knew what the answer was. Kol ben Levi Loka, Ben Levi is getting whipped, and perhaps his clothing is being burned because he fell asleep at his guard post. We're skipping the next halach. I'm going to Yud Beis, the last halach in this parak. This raises the interesting issue that we talked about. Keseder hazeh osem b'chol layla v'layla chutz mileili Shabbos ein biyodem or el bokim b'neres hadokim sham be'erev Shabbos. This is what they did every single night. The Ish Harabayis, Ben Bibi, would go through the whole Beis Hamikdash, check on every god. And there were people with torches in front of him so you can see what he's doing. But at Leil Shabbos, they didn't walk with torches because you're not allowed to hold the torch on Shabbos. It's a gezeira. You may come to adjust the torch. For example, we know you're not supposed to read at candles because you may come to adjust the candle as it's flickering. You'll forget it's Shabbos. You're involved in your book and you'll shake the candle. So we don't read at candles. And all these kind of things are called shavus. It's an issa d'Rabbanan. The Rabbanan made certain gezeiros and said, don't do certain things so that you don't forget and come to violate Shabbos. Muktzah is another example. You're not allowed to write on Shabbos, but there's no Torah prohibition to pick up a pen and pencil on Shabbos. The pen and pencil becomes a muktzah as a takonas chachomim, as a gzeira. If you pick up the pen and pencil, you may forget and write, and that is a biblical transgression. So the chachomim did certain things which we call siyag la Torah. They made a gate around the Torah, and generally speaking, these siyagim, these fences, were not applicable to Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says that the Kohanim are zrizim heim. Kohanim are very alert. They're involved in very serious business the whole day in the avodah. They need to know what they're doing, when to do it, and how to do it. And therefore, they're very, very focused on what they're doing. And we don't have to worry that much about Kohanim. So inside the Beis Hamikdash, we say Kohanim zrizim heim. And these rabbinic gezeiros were not applied to the Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash. Yet the Rambam says here that they couldn't walk with torches in front of Ben Bibi Friday night. And the only reason you can't walk with a torch on Friday night would not be a biblical prohibition. It would be a rabbinic prohibition because you may come to adjust the torch, and that would be a biblical transgression. But walking with the torch itself is only a rabbinic prohibition, and that would seem to be permitted inside the Beis Hamikdash. But the Rambam says you can't do it. The Mishnah Lamelech, the Kesef Mishnah here on the Mishnah, question the Rambam. They give different answers about why the Rambam decided that this particular Shavuos, this particular Issa d'Rabbanan would not be waived inside the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore the Ish Harabayis, Ben Bibi, would walk around the Beis Hamikdash every night with torches to find out and see if anyone's sleeping. Leil Shabbos, they did not walk around with the torches according to the Rambam. Okay, let's take a look now at a piece of DaAs Tevunos. The few minutes we have left. So yesterday we were looking at page Dalet and page Hey of the DaAs Tevunos. And page Dalet and Hey of the DaAs Tevunos, Ramchal is explaining creation. Why did God create man? What's man's job? What's the tachlis? What's the goal of all this? And he gave us a principle that the Ribbono Shel Olam set things up in a way where the world is perfectly imperfect so that we can perfect it by working on ourselves, and we make ourselves better, we make the world better, and through that we become partners with Hashem in creation, and for that we get schar, we get ischus, we get merit, and schar, we get reward, and that becomes our card to enter Olam Haba. We have those choices that we can make, whether we want to do the work that it takes to perfect ourselves and perfect the world. The next day we learned about, if you remember, the olive tree and Orla in 3 years. And the point is, man, the ochel delav dilei bos listakule ba'ape. If someone eats from someone else, we're going to add the words on a regular basis. In other words, his panosa is to live off tzedakah. It's not because chas v'shalom someone needs tzedakah. There are so many matzavim where people need help, especially today. But someone mentally, emotionally says, my panosa is tzedakah. That is not the way God intended the world to run. We see this from the way the Ribbono Shel Olam set up the world with the hatava. The hatava, the God's perfectly good, and the perfect goodness is to allow someone else to benefit from God's goodness through the person earning it, not getting a free lollipop. And then the person not only earned it, but he feels good about himself because that which he has, he earned. And we see this not only for human beings, we see this from the olive tree or whatever tree. Yesterday with the fruits looking at the tree, the fruits not looking at the tree. So if we look on page 5 of the DaAs Tevunos, there's a note. We're going to take a look at the footnote 4. We need to go back to footnote 2. That's a long footnote. But today we're going to take a look at footnote 4 from a Friedlander. Maimer zeh shel ha-Yushalmi, this saying of the Yushalmi, which is man da'achel delav dilei ba'hislas takuli ba'ape, it comes from the Yushalmi Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud. When you eat that which is not yours, it's difficult to look into the person's face because you feel shame. And it's brought down, Muva B'tosas Maseches Kedusha, Dibar Masel Kol Mitzvah. V'ayim b'sefer Magid Meshom Lamar Rabbi Yosef Karo Zatzal. The Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, not only was he a posek who wrote the Shulchan Aruch for us, he was a Makubal, and he lived in a time of Mekubalim. When he came to Eretz Yisrael in Tzfas, which is a story in itself, when he came to Tzfas in Eretz Yisrael, there was an amazing group of tzaddikim that were in Tzfas. And they were amazing Mekubalim. The Beis Yosef was a Mekubal besides a Paisik. And the Beis Yosef had a Magid. He had an angel that came to learn with him. I don't know exactly how often, but he had an angel that came to learn with him. And every week, at least for this particular concept, for Chumash, for the Chumash concept, the Magid would come every week and teach something to the Beis Yosef about the parasha. And the Beis Yosef wrote down whatever the Magid told him, and this sefer became called Magid Meshorim. You can buy it in any good Sforim store, a Magid Meshorim of the Beis Yosef, all the Divrei Torah that the Malach taught him on the parasha. And of course, it's Kabbalah. In that sefer, there's a statement as follows that the Malach taught the Beis Yosef. The Nishmosin Adlo Osul Alma, I'm at the bottom of page 5. The Nishmosin Adlo Osul Alma, on the Shama before it comes down into this world, it goes into a body. It's up there in front of the Kisei HaKavod. Domu Laman Da'achel Nahamad Damalka B'loy Pulchana. The neshama at that point is like a person that is eating from the king and hasn't earned it. What did the neshama exactly do before it comes down to earth to merit being in front of the Kisei HaKavod and enjoying the Zif HaShechina? What exactly did the neshama do? The neshama was created. We're not going to get into that. The neshama was created and it's basking in the glory of the Ziv Hashchina. It didn't do anything yet. So this is very similar, the Malach told the Beis Yosef, to someone eating that which he didn't earn. And therefore the neshama, while it's in Shemayim, is in a state of some shame. Kedei lemepak, this is Aramaic, it's Kabbalah language. Kedei lemepak me'ahu kisufa, in order for the neshama to escape this shame of eating from quote unquote God's Ziv Hashchina, from enjoying and basking in God's Ziv Hashchina and not earning it, how does the neshama get out of that shame? Boy lemeisa bo alma. The neshama wants to come down to this world and go into a guf. And when it goes into the guf, it's going to be able to deal with the guf, control the guf, get the guf to do the right things, stop the guf from doing the wrong things. And after 120 years, the neshama can go back upstairs and say, I earned it. So the neshama, while it's upstairs, before it comes down to the guf, the Malach taught the Beis Yosef, is eating Nahama de Kisuf. It's nice to bask in the glory of God, but if you didn't earn it, it's a little shameful. So the neshama is waiting to come down to earth into a guf, l'misasik b'toru mitzvahs, in order to learn Torah and do mitzvahs, la'avda l'shamra, to worship Hashem, v'yichlon nahama below kisufa. And then the neshama can enjoy bread that has no shame attached to it. So this is the beginning or the introduction to a concept of the neshama comes down to earth to go into a body, to harness the body. The neshama's goal of coming down here is it knows it's going into a guf, and the guf wants to do all kinds of things that the neshama doesn't want it to do, and the guf doesn't want to do things that the neshama does want it to do. And the neshama, nevertheless, wants to come down. It wants to come down into the guf and take on this very, very difficult work, as I say many times in Shir. If someone had to think of a worse shidduch, this is probably the worst shidduch in the world. Putting a neshama in a guf, the guf wants all the gashmias, doesn't want ruchnias, and the neshama wants ruchnias, not instant gashmias. And it's a miracle that the two can live together. And man creates that miracle by keeping them together. And by serving Hashem, the neshama harnesses the kochas of the guf, and he makes the guf holy. And that's a process that the Ramchal is going to talk about later in the Sefer. So we have this important concept that man da'ochel dalav delay boys listakuli ba'ape. The Rebbeinu Shalom set up a system of bechira, where people make choices. When you make the right choice, you get schar. When you make the wrong choice, you get something else. And all of this is so that a person will understand that the perfect, precise system that God's running is based upon giving schar when you earn it. As I said yesterday, the idea that there's din in the world, let's not use the word punishment, but the idea that there's din, that there are people that don't get lollipops. There are people that never get a paj. I'm not talking about now, Corona, I'm just saying generally speaking. There's such a thing as onesh in the world. If there was no din in the world, then there'd be no chesed in the world. If everyone gets online to get the lollipop, then there's no chesed and there's no din, there's nothing. Everybody gets a lollipop. Din is what gives contours to chesed. By the very concept that din comes and says, Ruvain, please get off the chesed line. Shmelka, please get off the chesed line. We need to deal with certain things, Ruvain, Shmelka. After we deal with those things, you can get back on the chesed line. But right now, Ruvain and Shmelka, you can't stay on the chesed line. So that's going to help Ruvain and Shmelka, because they're going to be dealt with in a way that they can be dealt with, and they'll be able to get onto the chesed line in a more purified state. And for those who are already on the chesed line, they understand that they're on the chesed line because they earned it and it's not free lollipops. So din is part and parcel of chesed. If there's no din, you cannot define chesed. Chesed is just free lollipops for everybody, free for all. Din gives the contours, the definition, the parameters for chesed. This is a very important yesod for the rest of the Sefer. Again, the Rebbe Shalom set up this perfect system, precise system, where a person can earn his way and feel good about it. Everybody have a wonderful day. Those Jews who need refuahs, you should get refuahs. Those Jews who need nechamas, they should have nechamas. Those Jews who need Yeshua should get Yeshuas. The good dimension of the world, the Rosh Hashanah should take care of them too. We should be zeicha to see the Binyan Beis HaMikdash. I'm telling you, it's a tremendous nachas ruach to the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's a tremendous nachas ruach that there are a group of Jews that get up every morning and want to learn how to build a Beis HaMikdash. And I was thinking yesterday, when you talk about, let's say, Rome, you talk about Roman history. There's no Roman future. When you talk about Babylon, there's the history of the Babylonian Empire. There's nothing to study about the future of the Babylonian Empire. There's nothing to study about the future of the Roman Empire. There's nothing to study about the future of the Greek Empire. You can study Greek history. There's nothing to study about the future of a Persian Empire, notwithstanding what they think. And there's only Persian history. Jewish people, we have Jewish history, but we have a future that we study. There's Jewish future. And every morning when we get up and we learn about the second Beis HaMikdash, which, as we explained in the first year, that learning is going to be used for the third Beis HaMikdash from Herav Yameinu, we're mispalo for it. We're learning about Jewish future. The Jewish future is we're going to walk on the Har HaBayis and we're going to go into the Beis HaMikdash and we're going to bring karbonos. So instead of learning Jewish history every morning, the Rebbe Shalom has tremendous nachas, that there's a group of Jews in Eretz Yisrael that wake up, they're interested in learning about how to build this Beis HaMikdash that the Rebbe Shalom wants to give to us from Herav Yameinu. Everyone have a wonderful day. Again, please, everybody, tomorrow, have in mind Ilu Neshama of Shmuel Lazar ben Michael, and the Shia tomorrow will be dedicated in his memory. And tomorrow we'll speak a few minutes about Yom HaZikaron, which begins this evening. Kol Tov.